So it's March 2018. North American Fur Auctions has had their second auction of the season. So typically they'll do 3 auctions, an early, middle, and a late auction. A lot of times the early auction will be December, January, and then the next auction will be around February, March, and then the last one in May. And we just finished, so this is the second week of March. The auction just ended week before last. So overall, the market's been kind of depressed for several years now, and this year is kind of similar with a couple of high points. So they always put out an auction report, and if you go to North American Fur Auctions or just Google NAFA, N-A-F-A, auction results or auction report, it can take a little bit of finding and searching sometimes to find it. But I was just gonna, read through kind of their report and give you an update on the market if you're not paying attention, or don't go to NAFA very regularly. Overall, a couple of important points to look at. They'll always publish the average price, and they'll publish by species, by grade, and then the average price and their top lot, which is the highest price. That's the best quality for that species and that grade. Another thing they'll publish is the percent sold. So that's something that's always good to look at, because if there's really great average prices but a small percent sold, then that means that overall the market's not that great, because what NAFA will do is they will no sale. If they're not getting the prices that they expect or they think they should be getting, they'll just hold that fur and either negotiate afterwards in what they call a private treaty, or that fur will roll over to the next sale, which is not always necessarily a great thing to do. And just some anecdotal evidence. So like I say, usually they have 3 sales. The first sale is super early. I mean, our season just gets started December 1st. So to have any fur, because the fur's got to be in usually a month-ish before the sale, so that they've got time to grade all the lots. They have I can't remember what they call it. It's where the buyers can come in for a couple days prior to the auction and look at the lots, and then they actually have the auction. So you're talking about having to have furs in the 1st of December, and unless I held furs over, it'd be tough. Or unless the previous year was kind of exceptionally bad and a lot of fur doesn't sell and rolls over, it's tough to get furs in that first auction. But usually that kind of sets the stage of if it's a good year, those will be the best prices of the season, because like I say, sometimes that falls where people are just kind of getting started. At least in the south and the north, December, a lot of places got snowed in, and so they're kind of put out of trapping coons and some of the stuff once the snow gets out, and that's a whole nother scenario. And I'm rambling here, I apologize. So I'll just go through Beaver. They also put and I'll put a link to this in the description below, so that you can look. They'll also tell you how many are offered, and so that's kind of interesting to see sometimes. But overall, Beaver averaged in the 90% of beaver sold, and you're talking 35,000 beavers, so that's pretty good. The average was in the $10 range, which is not spectacular. And the beaver has been kind of a disappointing factor for a lot of folks, because there's folks that do trap beavers pretty heavy. So all in all, beaver's not spectacular. Otters, 85% sold. The average price was just under $32, which is not spectacular. Generally, what I tell people in the South, just strictly for fur, your 2 highest value species are bobcat and otter. Because even a $30 otter beats a $10 beaver, or a $2 coyote, or a $12 coon, a $12 on the high end, $6, $5 or $4 coon. So really, otter being $30 is not bad. There have been years when otters gets up in the hundreds, but all that stuff cycles. So it'll come back around, and hopefully anyway we'll have another couple of good years running on fur prices. Mink sold 100%, which it seems that because North American Fur Auction sells wild fur and farm fur, which farm fur is mink and fox, and it seemed like their farmed mink sold really well. And usually if farm fur sells well, it tends to flow over into wild fur, because that means there's a little bit more demand for fur, and wild fur is kind of can be viewed as a little bit cheaper alternative. And so that's why I think they had really nice sales on the wild mink, or the farm mink, the ranch mink is what they'll call it. And so wild mink all sold at 100%, all sold. Average was in the just over $11, so still nothing spectacular. A lot of people, hear mink and they think of times in the past when mink was was top dollar fur, and that's not the case anymore. Muskrats 94% sold. The average was 3 1/4. That's not bad. Really high. The top lot was $7. A couple years ago, muskrats were averaging 7 to 10. That's really good, because muskrats is a fur that you can catch a lot of pretty easily, and they skin and put up real easy. So, to do anything with muskrats, you got to catch a lot of them, and so when the price moves even a couple bucks, that's pretty significant. Raccoons overall, they're broken down into several categories. 150,000 coons offered. Probably about half sold, I guess, looking at the percentages. There was one grade that 100% sold for $8 was the average price, so nothing spectacular. The best grade, $22. And then us, down in the southern area, in the eastern area, it's kind of that lower grade. So average $8 for me. I wouldn't complain about average $8 coon, but realistically, our coon would probably be lower than that. Gray fox, 60% sold, which is not great. The average was $23, which is a pretty good average on gray fox. Gray fox can be kind of a sleeper sometimes. Red fox, again, red fox is lower in the 40% range, sold out of 30,000. Red fox, that's a lot of fox still on the market. Average for good heavies and semi-heavy, so real good quality northern fur, around $25. For the central, a little bit lesser quality, is 17. So that's one thing. It seems like a lot of people think about red fox and mink as being the best quality fur or the highest value fur, but it's generally not the case. And a lot of times here lately, it seems that gray fox has outpaced red fox where that's concerned. Huge bright spot in the market, in all the sales, from the smaller local fur sales to the more regional sales, has been coyotes. Coyotes have been in high demand for the trim market, is what the coyotes go for. And out of 74,000 coyotes offered, all of them were 100% sold. So that's pretty significant. And they range anywhere from, you got your heavy western and mountain kind of region coyotes, good heavy quality furs were averaged over $100, which is pretty substantial. You get into what they call the Section 3, so that would be a lot of our coyotes are going to fall into Section 3. I think those average $20. So I'm pretty excited about seeing what my old coyotes will bring on the market this year. 2 years ago, I had coyotes at the sale that sold for less than $2. So you never know how the market is funny, and you never know how it's going to swing. Right now, coyotes are in pretty strong demand. Hopefully that'll continue. What's kind of unusual was that bobcats have been, for the top quality bobcats, they have been they're usually pretty consistently a high value fur item. This year it seems that they've even blown it out of the water more so. The average western, and if you go to the North American Fur Auction site, they list them as lynx cat, but that's our bobcat. So don't let that confuse you. They have a lynx and a lynx cat. The lynx cat is our bobcat. So the average western lynx was $380. That's pretty substantial. And the top lot, not the average western lynx, the average western bobcat, was $380. Top lot was $2,400. That's pretty substantial, and that's high mountain bobcats coming out of the Rockies typically, and those are cats that they usually, I mean, it's not uncommon for those cats to top out in the around $1,000 range, but that's I've never done it, but from what I've seen, that's generally a low production, because you've got to get up in the country where those cats are, so you're traveling a good way to get there, and you got your trap spaced out, and that's you may have coyotes, which for me, I mean, you're talking about that's probably those $100 coyotes in there. For me, that would be awesome. When you got a $100 coyote blocking up $1,000 bobcat set, that's not what you want. So, and gray foxes are fairly common on what I've seen of those trap lines out there. So, it sounds spectacular, and it's pretty incredible numbers, but it's not. It's pretty incredible offerings, prices, but it's not like you can compare that to eastern trapping coons or stuff like that, where you can catch a couple hundred of them. It's a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of work that goes into catching those high dollar top lot cats like that. And they're prized because they have a nice large white belly, versus, I don't know how well you can see, but this is a pretty typical anything down. This is what I would consider a pretty darn nice Georgia bobcat, and you can see it's almost a little bit dingy. There's a couple little white patches, but it's not very bright, and it's kind of narrow. Those big western cats will have, from edge to edge, just super bright, super clear, real big spots, a lot heavier furred. So it's kind of a niche market, and definitely be something that would be neat to do from my standpoint. But like I say, don't let those numbers fool you. It's a lot of work to put a dozen cats on the board out there. So, and overall, that kind of wraps it up. Not a terrible. Well, some people would say it is. In my experience, I haven't lived through any major fur booms. Probably the biggest fur boom I've seen was the otter prices going up to $100, $150, and that didn't last too terribly long. But it's, you don't do this because you are getting rich off of it. At least the way I see it, in my experience. I do this because I enjoy it. I enjoy the chase. I enjoy matching wits with those animals, and I enjoy taking an active part in the wildlife management. And to me, it's hard for some people to understand, but to me, if I can harvest this bobcat and stretch him, and he goes and sells, and I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into that animal. I really appreciate and value that animal and what he represents. I feel like I'm honoring that animal by getting a use out of it. Hopefully somebody will be able to be proud of the trim that's on their coat or wherever that animal goes. But I feel like I say, I feel like I'm honoring that animal, all of these animals, by getting a use out of them versus them getting hit by a car and rotting on the side of the road. So that's what we face, and that's why we do what we do, is to try to take an active part in wildlife management, knowing that these animals, a certain percentage of them are going to die every year, and if I can try to help make sure that that's not a death from disease or starvation, that's a long and slow and drawn out death, but that I can make it a swift death and a humane death, and then get a good use out of this natural, renewable, sustainable resource. I take a lot of pride in that, and I enjoy it. So that's kind of a tangent. I don't really know where I was going, other than to say, I don't know. We don't do this because we're getting rich off of it. We do it for the love of the land, for the love of what we learn, and for the love of the animal. It's my aspect, anyways, and my 2 cents. So anyway, if you are still trapping, good luck. If you're like me and you're putting up fur, good luck there too, because it's a lot of work, and you're missing out on all the days of being out there the excitement of the catches. Now you're just kind of reliving it all and enjoying the grind that the fur shed is. But hope this is valuable with some good information. Not a spectacular fur year, but there've been worse, and so maybe we're on the cusp of a little uptick and a little run on wild fur. We'll see. So anyway, y'all have a good evening.